Okay, cool.
I guess we're live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to, is everybody here? Yes. Welcome to the joint Amazon user groups from Netherlands and Belgium and Luxembourg. And I'm sorry, I'm struggling here with my computers. Good day, everybody. So today we'll be having a recap of the Reinvent Amazon event in December. And I'm happy to announce we have Sohan, developer advocate from Amazon Web Services, will be running us through all of that. But before we get into that, let me introduce myself. I'm one of the people running the Amazon user group in Belgium, together with Niels and Ben, who you might also see pop up left and right. I think Ben is actually going to be in one of the roundtables, more on that in a second. And we also have Walter here, who is one of the poolers, I think you say in English, of the Amazon user group in Netherlands, together with plenty of our colleagues, of which I don't know all the names. So Walter will get into that in a second. So to give you a bit of an idea on the planning, so in a couple of minutes, we'll jump right in with Sohan. He'll be spending about 45 minutes on presenting the first part, after which we'll, at 4 o'clock, we'll come back to a little roundtable, including Maarten and David from the Netherlands community, who will be, together with Sohan, responding to some of your questions and sharing some of their opinions and their insights and giving you some interesting tidbits that to learn from. At 4:15, we'll be moving on with the second part from Sohan. That'll take about another hour, where we wrap up with a second roundtable, where Ben, my colleague in the Belgian user group, together with Angelo from the Dutch group, will again be responding to certain questions. You've already heard me say it twice, questions. So please don't forget to put your questions in the comments box. If all goes well, we'll be able to see those questions, and we'll pick a couple of the most interesting questions to have a little chat about during the roundtables. During the session of Sohan, we'll try and respond to some of the other questions, but Sohan will be focused on his presentation so that we can be tight on time. We don't want to go over time today. So I'm super excited, by the way, to be for this first cooperation between Belgium and Netherlands. And let's hope that in the near future we can do more things together. That'd be excellent, in my opinion. And then speaking from the Belgian team, for us, this is really a nice kickoff. Corona kind of messed things up last year for us, and the whole meetup group fell still. And this is an ideal moment to get things going again. And I also want to invite you, all of you, at 5:30, we'll be doing a bring your own drink, where we'll be talking a little bit about the future of the Belgian meetup group and figuring out what we can do. But everybody's welcome. I'll be posting a Zoom link later in the comments. That's it for me. I don't know, Walter, do you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Frederik. I'm also really happy to do a cooperation between Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, simply because we're close together, and it makes it easier for Sohan to hold his story once, and a bigger group is better. So I'm looking forward to interaction. If you have questions, please post them in the comments. We're really looking forward to discussing them, and that's also why we put in the two roundtable intermezzos at the middle and at the end. I'm representing the Netherlands community right now, but you'll see more of our community later on. There's quite a few of us, so I'm a little bit afraid to call out all the names from the top of my head, because I'm definitely going to forget one. We're hoping that we'll see you more during the year and all the events that we're organizing. And for now, I want to keep it nice and short and give the stage to Sohan, who will run us through the 300 million announcements that Reinvent had last year. And I hope you enjoy it. Take it away, Sohan.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Walter. Thank you, Frederik. Hopefully my audio is coming through clearly. If it's not, just leave a comment. Yeah, it is. All right, folks. So first off, let me introduce myself. My name is Sohan Maheshwar. I'm a dev advocate with AWS. I mainly look after the Benelux region, which is Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. So first off, thank you so much for having me, Belgium User Group, Netherlands User Group, and big hello to the Albanian User Group as well. Hello, folks. I know Zamira invited you also. Thank you for joining us. Like Frederick mentioned, we have a Zoom call at the end, like an after party sort of thing. So feel free to join. There will also be a survey at the end where if you complete the survey, you'll get $25 credit code. So stay till then, please. And like Frederick mentioned, the format's simple. I'll talk for a bit, and then we'll have a roundtable. I'll talk for a little longer, and then we'll have another roundtable. Keep those questions coming through. Keep those comments coming through. And if you want to, make jokes in the comments, do that. I'm having a terrible hair day today because I cut my own hair and it's just all over the place. So feel free to make fun of that as well. I also like trivia, so I'll be giving out prizes again for like trivia questions I will be asking during the deck, so stay focused. Here's the agenda for today. First, it's a simple recap. Like Walter said, there were like 300 million announcements. I'm trying to take the top ones. The big focus of this is maybe not to discuss the deepest technical aspect, but I'll talk a little bit more about the business.
Sohan?
Yes.
Sorry, I think your screen is no longer shared. You had it shared right before the...
Okay. There we go.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay.
All right,
Sorry
thanks.
about that, yes,
No worries.
Walter. Is that still working? Okay, that's still working. Yeah, like I was saying, a lot of launches. So I'll be talking a bit about the tech parts of things, but also some of the business implications. Why is this important? How is this vital for you and your customers? So in part one, all of this is what we'll cover, and in part two, we'll recap harder, and we'll talk about AI, ML, mobile, etc. So let's dive straight in. As you would know, reInvent this year was virtual, which was a bit of a bummer. I actually look forward to going to Vegas every year, even though Vegas I find it a very strange place. But it is nice to go there every year. But that meant that we had people from all over. We had a lot of sessions this time. And really, it started off with Andy Jassy's keynote, and he spoke a little bit about why reinvention, especially at this time, is so important. I think a lot of companies and all of us have been affected by the pandemic in some way or the other. Businesses have been affected, personal lives, and it really has accelerated digital transformation in the last year or so. So he spoke about the 8 keys to reinvention. Now, I'm not going into the details, but he spoke a bit about few things like the leadership will to invent and reinvent and how key that is for a company to digitally transform. And I'm glad that you are here today so that you can take away some of the learnings from here to actually reinvent. He also spoke about the acknowledgement that you can't fight gravity. So if something's going to happen, it will. It's really up to you to roll with the punches, to change, and to keep reinventing with the times. One way of doing that, of course, is to invest in talent that's hungry to invent. We are at Amazon, we have a leadership principle about hiring and developing the best. So really look at that, if you're looking at reinvention. He also spoke about a couple of things which are sort of interrelated, like solving real customer problems with builders. And you will find that as a theme for the rest of today. Again, don't think of it as, hey, launch 1, launch 2, launch 3, but what are the business implications? How can I use this to reinvent or to make my business better? He also spoke about speed and not over complexifying things. And again, you'll find that as a theme from today too. And lastly, he spoke about one of the keys to reinvention being pulling everything together with aggressive top-down goals. So if you are in a position of leadership or a position of influence in your company, really think about how you can implement these changes from the top down. So let's get straight in and talk about reinventing compute. I'm sure you know that EC2 is, you can call it Amazon or AWS's bread and butter. It's probably the most widely used service, among all of our many services. And essentially, we announced the reinvention of many EC2 instances. We announced faster networking, the most powerful ML training instances with P4D, the most powerful ML inference is with instances with INF1. We also announced largest high memory instances for workloads like SAP HANA, Oracle, and so on. And we're the only cloud provider that supports Intel, AMD, and ARM. Now, I want you to look at this way, right? Like again, 10 years ago, if you were doing compute, you sort of used the limited number of instances for the different types of workloads that you had. The things have changed so much that we have different types of instances for the type of workloads that you want to run. So suppose you're a company that's doing a lot of machine learning training, look at using the P4D instance. If you're a company that's running, like a SAP HANA application, which needs a lot of memory, look at that particular instance. So really it's that old adage, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Now you have the bunch of tools, you have the different types of EC2 instances for your workloads. So really look at optimizing and customizing based on what type of workload you're running. Now, a lot of these superlatives like faster and better and largest, they were all, I think, possible because of the reinvention of virtualization and the chips to accelerate this pace of innovation. I think a couple of years ago, or maybe 3-4 years ago, we realized that to improve hyper virtualization, we had to use or develop our own virtualization system, and we called it the Nitro system. And this essentially improved the use of hardware and software by providing a very distinct layer between the two, and this helped improve performance when it came to virtualization. And because of that, we worked with ARM to build the Graviton 2 processor. Again, customers have already started using it, and they're seeing huge cost reductions and performance improvements after using that processor. So to go into some of the technical details, these are some of the new instances that we launched. For instance, we launched the M5ZN instance. And this is an instance that's ideal for workloads like gaming, like financial applications, simulation modeling, and so on. It reduces software license costs by fewer virtual CPUs with a 45% better price performance than the older M5 instances. Similarly, if you're using a D2 instance currently, you can upgrade to a D3, and again, that's all you need to do. You don't have to do any other work, and you can actually run high-scale file systems with big data with up to 336 terabytes. Again, if you're using large database and analytics workloads, think of using or upgrading to the R5B instance. It gives you 3x EBS performance compared to the older R5 instances. And lastly, if you want to do very gaming-focused or very graphic-intensive workloads, look out for the G4AD instance, which gives you a 45% better price performance over the older G4DN instances. Again, like I said, let's not get lost in the weeds of the technical challenges. All of that, or rather the technical details, all of that's available on the documentation page. You don't have to worry. Again, think of the sort of workloads that you are running and think of how you can optimize for those particular workloads. Speaking of which, we also launched our custom ML chip for training, and this is called Trainium. Earlier, you might remember we had launched a ML chip for inference specifically called Inferentia. I think it's cool that the names are sort of, it tells you what it does in case you sort of forget, Sometimes things like M4ZN, G4AD can be confusing. This is easy to remember. Trainium does training, Inferentia does inferences. I'm just joking, of course, but yeah. Essentially, this gives you the most teraflops compute cloud versus any other machine learning instance in the cloud. So if you're a company or if you're an organization that does a lot of ML training, look no further than using this AWS Trainium chip. It works really well with common frameworks like TensorFlow, MXNet, and PyTorch. So you don't have to worry about all of those compatibility issues as well. Oh, and one last thing, as our Steve Jobs famously said, just before reInvent, we launched Amazon EC2 Mac instances. This is essentially to develop, to build, to test, and sign Apple apps in Amazon EC2. As far as I know, this doesn't exist outside of the big cloud providers. So definitely a big deal, especially if you're doing iOS and macOS applications. Fun fact, I started my career building iOS apps, so I was very kicked when I saw something like this. Also, not so fun fact, I just learned that the guy who developed Objective-C, which was used earlier before Swift to build iOS apps, actually passed away this week. So yeah, RIP, but yeah, thanks for building Objective-C. All right, so we spoke about compute. Let's talk a little bit and stay on that theme and talk about reinventing containers. I'm sure a lot of you all use and deploy containers today, and you use ECS and EKS. So let's see what the different launches with containers were in reInvent. As you would know, AWS is the best place to run and manage containers. If you're not familiar, we have three main services around containers. We have EKS, which is a fully managed service to run Kubernetes at scale. We have ECS, which is a container orchestration using AWS-style APIs. And of course, we have Fargate, which is a serverless, it's a serverless service to really run containers at scale. In fact, 80% of all the containers in the cloud today run on AWS. So if you're not convinced yet, you should be now. So let's talk about each of them and start with ECS Anywhere. We really heard from our customers that they wanted more flexibility when they could deploy containers using Amazon ECS. A lot of US customers, you all probably have your own data centers or you have something on-prem and you want to run ECS. You want ECS with the same APIs, with the same cluster management, the workload scheduling that you get from ECS in the cloud, because it takes away from the heavy lifting. You don't need to run updates, maintain your own container orchestration and all of that. So we launched ECS Anywhere. This is coming this year. So keep your eyes open for when it'll be in GA or generally available. This really enables customers to run and manage container-based applications on-prem, including on virtual machines, bare metal servers, and other customer-managed infrastructure. So look out for ECS Anywhere. Similarly, there was Amazon EKS Anywhere announced, which again will be launched in 2021. Very similarly, if you're running Kubernetes clusters on-prem, feel free, or I'm sure you're excited about EKS Anywhere, which will allow you to sort of be fully managed and run those Kubernetes containers, on-prem, on your own data centers, and in bare metal servers as well. Again, it sort of takes away the heavy lifting of operating your clusters on premise, and it works on any infrastructure. So hey, why wouldn't you? Again, keeping with that theme, we spoke about compute, containers. Let's talk a little bit about the launches during serverless and reinventing serverless. As you would know, AWS's serverless offerings are really pioneered by AWS Lambda, which it still blows my mind that something like this exists. So side note, I run this thing called the Emerging Tech Show on Twitch, and where I talk about emerging technology. And I often say that we should always take that step back to think how far we've come in like 10 years in general tech. I'm not talking about just AWS. And it still blows my mind that something like Lambda exists and serverless computing exists in this day and age. Speaking of which, we announced generally available AWS Lambda container support. Essentially, you can package your code, your dependencies as a Docker image or as an open container. And yeah, it supports containers essentially. So this allows you to have a consistent set of tools for containers and Lambda-based applications. We realize that a lot of companies and a lot of y'all might have workflows that involve containers right now, but not necessarily a Lambda function. So giving that Lambda container support really gives that sort of flexibility to use that same set of tools for containers and for Lambda-based applications. The great thing is you can also deploy these Lambda functions built on top of third-party base images. So it gives you that flexibility as well. Speaking of Lambda again, we announced, and this is again generally available, 1 millisecond billing granularity. Again, blows my mind that just 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we were talking about investing hardware for a data center for a 3-year buy-in or lock-in. And now we're saying, hey, event-driven for 1 millisecond billing. How insane is that? This really helps workloads especially when you're running apps that involve things like interactive web calls, data streaming, and so on. It has already started effect in the December 2020 billing cycle. So engineers, here's where you really show off and make money. Optimizing actually becomes that much more important. So yeah, engineers, we're looking at you to really start optimizing for that millisecond latency so that you can optimize your Lambda functions and reduce your costs. And speaking of Lambda functions and optimizations, we now allow larger functions for AWS Lambda. So now you can allocate up to 10 GB of memory to a Lambda function. This is more than a 3x increase from earlier. So feel free to run like larger Lambda functions. And again, keeping with the 1 millisecond memory, think of how you can optimize by running the two. So now you can also think of running Lambda for additional workloads that might be slightly more intensive in terms of compute. So there you have it. We covered compute, containers, and serverless. There was one big launch for a service called AWS Proton. AWS Proton is in preview, but essentially it ties together the aspects of deploying applications for serverless and containers into one workflow. How it works is essentially you hand off your deployments to like a platform team, right? And they do all of the deployments on using whatever CI/CD pipeline, monitoring, and all of that. Really, there isn't a service or a tool that gives you a single pane to actually do all of this, to maintain your serverless deployments, your container deployments, and so on. So Proton is the first fully managed deployment service that allows you to do all of this. And devs can use different application stacks to deploy this infrastructure and the code pipelines, and IT can push automatic updates. So it is very powerful. It's still in preview, and I don't have a demo for you, unfortunately, but keep a lookout for announcements about this. Essentially, how it works is teams that are using Proton, again, your platform team, will create like a stack, that defines everything that is needed for provisioning, for deploying, and for monitoring. And essentially, as a dev, if you're logging into Proton to use a published Proton stack, you can automate your infrastructure provisioning and then deploy the application code. So that's how it works. Anyway, so that was, we covered compute, containers, and serverless. We're going to take a small break and do trivia time. So in trivia time, I'm going to ask a question. The first person to answer correctly will win some credit codes. And you can ping me later for credit codes, okay? First question is simple. Which AWS service has a name common with the language spoken in Mesopotamia? Again, go back to your history from what you studied in school, put it in the chat, and the first one to answer gets a prize. I'm just looking at the comments, and Ben is saying, if you're trying out Proton, there is feedback about the direction it should go. Yes, there is a link. So yeah, do give us a feedback. It's very much in preview. It's something new, so we'd love to hear feedback. Okay, we have FYSP saying Lambda. That's not the right answer. Oh, we have a correct answer. Rogev or Rogave says Amazon Sumerian. Good answer, Rogev. Ping me offline and I will give you a prize. Yeah, good answer. There's more questions coming up. Don't worry. I think hopefully everyone will get a chance to probably win something. So we spoke a bit about compute, compute in the sense of EC2, but also in the sense of containers and serverless. Let's talk a bit about deployment at the edge. I think as tech moves on, there's going to be a lot more software and a lot more processing that will happen at the edge. The edge can mean everything from, like a local zone to like a 5G tower or an IoT device, but we will see a lot more of this. And essentially, it's about innovating where computing can be done. Computing is not just limited to a server anymore. It can also happen on a tiny IoT monitoring device somewhere. In keeping with that theme, there were 3 big announcements regarding outposts, local zones, and wavelengths. So I'll speak in a little bit about the outposts one. For those of you who are not familiar, Outpost essentially allows you to access AWS resources using on-prem workloads and resources. It's physical hardware that you can install in on-premise, and it gives you access to AWS services. I won't touch too much upon local zones and wavelength because they are very US focused right now. But I think it's important to know that this exists and will be coming to EMEA or EU shores very soon. With local zones, of course, you're getting closer to your end users, and resources which is not on-prem, but in a particular geographical area. Right now, as far as I know, we don't have a local zone in the Benelux region. Maybe someone can correct me on chat if I'm wrong. But that's the idea behind it, So you're reducing that latency in your applications by having infrastructure closer to your customers. Wavelength is a similar concept in the sense that with 5G, which it will be in all our phones very soon. You want to bring compute and deployment closer to the edge. So what really think of it this way: if you have an augmented reality application, you have your phone. I'm looking out of my phone and I'm looking at Fondle Park, and then I turn and it says direction to Dam Square this way. That has to happen instantly, and with the infra that exists right now, that won't happen. So you need to bring down that latency so much by bringing compute and so much more processing closer to the edge. That's really where wavelength comes in. So there are wavelength availability zones in some places in North America and also Tokyo, not yet in EMEA, but you'll hopefully hear something soon. Speaking of Outposts, we announced in 2021 the launch of Outposts in 2 new sizes. And it's called the 1U and the 2U form factors. I'm just going to read this because it's a lot of stats, but the 1U form factor is 19 inches wide and 24-inch deep cabinets, uses Graviton 2 processor, and it has 64 virtual CPUs with 128 gigabits in memory. The 2U form factor is more suitable for 19-inch wide and 36-inch deep cabinets, has double the number of CPUs, so 128, and 512 gigabits of memory. Essentially, Outposts are ideal for workloads that require really low latency and local processing needs. I think that's the key. You want local processing needs. A lot of our customers, they've migrated their apps to the AWS region. They're considering cloud app migrations, but there is still high management overhead, operational complexity to deploy all of this. So Outpost really extends that AWS infrastructure and the services and the APIs to any of these data centers. So look out for these 2 new sizes in Outposts for your needs. Moving on to data analytics. Now, we had a lot of announcements about data analytics. I am sure you've heard this cliche about data being the new oil, like literally everywhere, Honestly, not lot from my experience talking to customers, talking to devs, a lot of companies don't know what to do with all of that data that's coming in. There's so much data coming in, you're not able to cut through the clutter and figure out effectively how to store, how to process, and how to visualize all of this data that's coming in. And really, that's where all of these announcements come into picture. How do you effectively store your data? How do you effectively transform that data? Because data in the real world looks something like this. You have this large data lake with all of this data coming in, and you have your non-relational database, you have a database, you have a team somewhere that's doing some machine learning, you have some team that's doing big data processing, some team that's trying data warehousing. But what you really want as a customer is something like this, where you have a data lake that's scalable. You have data services that are purpose-built, which means that hey, I want to build a graph relationship for this thing, you have a database for that. I want to build something that's very, very low latency and extremely flexible, you have something for that. You also want to be able to move data seamlessly between all of this, because otherwise, your data is going to be in silo everywhere and you're not getting the most out of it. You also need unified governance. Again, if your data is all over the place, that means you have like 7, 8 different ways of governing that data, which is just going to complexify everything 10x. And lastly, of course, with all of this, you need something that performs well and is cost effective. Honestly, it does sound like the holy grail, but this is what customers want. So from an AWS point of view, this is what we see our lakehouse architecture, as we call it, for our customers. In the middle, of course, is your data lake. And we have purpose-built data services like Aurora and DynamoDB and S3 and all of that. We also give you machine learning capabilities to really do a lot of useful things with that data, as well as services such as Glue, which really help you extract, transform, and load these data. So let's start with each of these, or rather, let's start with Glue and talk about each of these. Glue, like the name suggests, holds all of this together. So Glue has been around for a while. If you're not familiar, it is useful in extracting, transforming, and loading your data. It helps with integrating your data faster. You have a bunch of different data sources. You can automate at scale for all your ETL transformations. And of course, it's serverless in a way, right? So you're not paying for servers to really manage. So we launched two big features with Glue this time. So our data engineers typically love the ETL capabilities of Glue, but very often they wanted to do some customizations with that, or they want to write small scripts to be able to do something with it. Hence, we couldn't do it before, so hence we launched something called AWS Glue Studio. So this I think is very cool because it allows for visual authoring of ETL jobs without writing any code. You don't have to write code. So again, it's about your data analyst probably is not a coder. So how will that person really, do some visual authoring? Here's where Glue Studio comes in. So what you can do is really you can monitor thousands of jobs through a single pane of glass. It is completely distributed. You're not authoring by hand, which can be tedious and error prone, and you need a skill set for that. But you get a complete graphical user interface to actually do all of this for you. Essentially, this was designed for you to create good ETL jobs, and after you design a job in the graphical interface, it generates Apache Spark code for you. So again, it's abstracting that challenge of coding. When the job is ready, you basically just run it and you monitor the job status again using Glue Studio, which is the UI. The other big announcement with Glue is this tool called AWS Glue Data Brew, and I'm going to show you a demo of this. Essentially, this is visual data preparation for analytics and machine learning. I'm sure you can identify when I say when you're presenting something to like leadership, it always has to be in a visually pleasing format. You need like a rich visual interface to show your data and show really what you have. Data Brew has 250 plus transformations. So again, you can automate tasks. Again, you don't need to expect your business analyst, your data analyst to know coding, etc. All of this can be done using those built-in transformation. And yeah, let's just see a demo of how this works. Okay, again, hopefully the video plays and I'll talk over it, but this is what Brew basically is. Okay, so we just create a new project and you can select data sets from different sources. It could be from like S3 or Redshift or wherever. You can also import data sets. So that's what my video playing, yes. So that's what we're going to do. This demo, they've already imported a data set. I do that, I give a role name. I just choose 2,500 random number of rows for sampling, and I prepare the data set. Cool visualizations there. So this is how the interface looks like. So you're essentially running a job on the entire data set right now. Now you can see things that this is data from a bike service, right? So it's a city bike demo and it's in New York City. So there's start time, end time, location, etc. You can choose which data type you want and you can clean the data as well. This is important because for those of you all who work in data, you'll know that cleaning the data is the most important bits. So for instance, here I'm choosing start time. I'm going to say choose my date time format and I've changed it to a particular date time format. I'm adding a new column for day and I'm going to take that data and add it in there. Right, let's see what we do next. Okay, so start station name has a bunch of special characters in it. It says 7th Avenue and Park Place, etc. Honestly, I prefer the Dutch namings where it's just like a street name, unlike New York where it's so complicated. But you want to remove the special characters, so I just run something saying remove special characters and it's done. Similarly, there's a user type, so I can filter by whether it's a customer, a subscriber, free user, whatever. And yeah, so I'm doing all of this transformation and cleaning up of data using a visual interface right now. Just going to go a little ahead. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so these are all the steps we have done. We have changed the type, we have split a column, we have removed special characters, all of that. You can see a summary of that on the side. And then you can actually choose to pivot tables again. A lot of you all might have done this on Excel, but Data Brew, takes it like, that much more powerful. You can run a lot more queries, etc. And yeah, I'm just grouping it, choosing a particular visualization that I need. So I need user type, I want to aggregate it by a certain group, and I'm going to run it. So it takes a while, of course. And yeah, here it's creating, like visualizations for you to actually see the data that you've cleaned, you've processed, and now you're running. So that's how it works. We spoke about Glue as really holding that lake house formation together. Let's talk about lake formation, which is how you can build a secure data lake. Typically, this took months to do, to actually build a data lake with so many data sources. But now with this new service called Lake Formation, still in preview, you can do this in a matter of few days. It has capabilities like transactions, row level security, and acceleration. So let's talk a bit about each of them. Yeah, sorry, I lost where I was. There we go. Yeah, so lake formation basically has transactions, row level security, and acceleration. These capabilities are basically available via the API updates for these data lakes, and they extend the governance of lake formation with, like things like row level security. So yeah, lake formation. Now, when lake formation creates your data lake, you have Glue to do your ETL. All of your data is typically stored in a data warehouse like Amazon Redshift. And Redshift has been around for a while. I'm sure a lot of you all use it quite a bit. But we announced 4 new capabilities. The first one was data sharing, which is basically the ability to move Redshift data from a Redshift data cluster to another AWS availability zone. A lot of our customers asked for this feature, and hence we've launched it. We also have a federated query for Amazon RDS and Aurora MySQL that we just launched. The thing with the new Redshift launches is that you can actually query and join data for one or more RDS or Aurora MySQL databases. Again, this is very powerful and goes back to the theme that we mentioned earlier, which is being able to seamlessly move data within this lakehouse formation. And that becomes that much more powerful for you. We also mentioned about how you can bring some machine learning to bring insights or to make predictions on using ML on your data. Again, I think this goes back to the fact that, hey, your business analyst team might not have a data scientist or a PhD to run machine learning models. Heck, even your team, your company might not have a data scientist or a machine learning expert. So how do you really run machine learning on the amount of data that you're sitting? Which is why we have something like a Redshift ML to do that for you. So data analysts, database devs, all of y'all can really leverage machine learning models and the power of ML to make predictions on the data that you have in Redshift. Again, to create this, it's fairly simple. You have to just apply standard SQL queries to that data in Redshift, and you will get predictions like fraud detection, risk scoring, etc., directly in your queries and your reports. So we spoke about storing your data. We spoke about extract, transforming, and loading. How do you really visualize the results of these data? How do you get business analytics and intelligence from all of this data that you're processing? And here's where Quickside comes in. Again, Quickside's been around for a while. And Quickside really enables you to get that BI or that business intelligence into your applications. So with Quickside, you can do machine learning powered natural language capabilities. I think this is very cool, having come from a background of chatbots and Alexa. Bringing conversational interfaces to something like business intelligence is very, very powerful. Because again, you might not have the expertise, or you might just have a team that would want to run simple queries like this to actually get data that understands differences in meanings and relationships. And again, this is not limited to only asking a specific set of questions. It's not an if statement saying if this word is there, run this, but it uses natural language querying to really get interesting insights. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to actually show you a demo of how this works. All right. So this is some data, again, US centric, don't know why, but this is sales data essentially. All right. And so this is a sales leader trying to get insights from her dashboard. And right now it's a graph, it's some numbers, it's a pie chart, and you get Q4 sales, etc. Let's actually take that a step forward and see how Quickside Q works. Okay. So someone in the team actually mails something like, help, I need California sales figures to set quotas for next quarter. All right, that's the query that this data analyst actually gets. So instead of extracting all of that data, you can actually type that question in the search bar. And you can say something like, show me last year's weekly sales in California. Now this is using natural language processing, and I can talk a lot about that, how it works. But essentially, it gets you that data immediately. You have slot values like year, weekly sales, etc. Like, hey, let me compare that with New York. Just add a versus New York, and you get a graph on with the two. Again, I think this is so mind-blowing, that you're able to just write something like this. You have natural language processing that gets you the business insights. And this can actually work way up as well. As a CEO or CIO, you don't need to be spending like 20 minutes trying to pull out all of this data from your business intelligence. You can do it yourself, like fully self-serve. Just say something like, hey, show me last week's weekly sales in California, and you get that data. Hopefully that was impressive. Going from that to one more trivia question. Let's see how that goes. Okay, this is specific now, and this is getting a little techie, but I'm looking for the name of a database company, which was originally called 10gen, and the name was later changed to imply humongous. That's a clue. It was changed to imply humongous. Here's another clue. It's not named after a character in the movie Blazing Saddles. Again, if you've seen the classic comedy movie Blazing Saddles, it's not named after that. All right, let's see the answers. I mean, there's usually a lag, so it'll take a couple. Hopefully someone other than Rogev will answer. I'd like to distribute the coupons out. I see a few questions, guys. I'll try and come back to them in a bit. How can we give answers? Roger, just type it in chat. Chat, yeah, first one wins, like fastest hands in the east, I don't know, in the west, whatever. Simple question, which database company's name was originally called 10gen, and the name was later changed to imply humongous? That's the clue, humongous. That's the clue there, so think very carefully. Yes, we have a correct answer. Oh, Rochid, you just missed out, but Dularted, I think, says MongoDB, which is absolutely the right answer. Congratulations, Dularted. Get in touch with me afterwards on Twitch, Slack, LinkedIn, I don't know, MySpace, anything. And yeah, I'll send you credit. Rochid, next time. You were almost there. Yes, this is indeed MongoDB. Mongo is supposed to mean humongous because it can store that much data. So yeah, good answer. Speaking of databases, let's talk a bit about reinventing databases. To be honest, not that many big announcements this year in the whole database space. We had a couple of announcements, let me go through them. I think the one big one, even though it's still in preview, is the launch of Amazon Aurora Serverless v2. Amazon Aurora exists, Amazon Aurora Serverless exists, but we announced v2 of Serverless. Again, with essentially scales to hundreds of thousands of transactions in a fraction of a second. I'm very excited about this because the team says we can expect up to 90% cost savings when compared to provisioning for peak load. Now, this is still very much in preview, so do check it out. Again, Serverless v2 can scale database workloads from hundreds to hundreds of thousands. Very excited about how this goes. We also announced the launch of Babelfish for Amazon Aurora Postgres SQL. Humor me here, but how many here have read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the famous Douglas Adams book? A lot of tech products are named Babelfish, I think, after that book. So if you've not read the book, basically Babelfish are these things that you just put in your ear, and it allows you for translation between languages. And this was written like in the 80s, so he didn't. I don't know if Douglas Adams saw the fact that we can do live translations in the future, but now we can. So that's the hint there in the name, basically. So with Babelfish, you can actually run SQL Server applications on Amazon Aurora with no code changes. So essentially, think of it as a translation layer. It's converting Postgres SQL, and it allows Postgres SQL to understand queries written for Microsoft SQL Server. So essentially, if you're using Microsoft proprietary TSQL, Babelfish is a layer in between that will translate it for you. This is especially useful when you're doing something like migration, so you can actually complete those migrations faster. And we actually didn't stop there. We were preparing for reInvent. We got a lot of feedback from customers who wanted to move away from SQL Server and that they were very excited for Babelfish. And a lot of them actually wanted to sort of take Babelfish and make their own modifications for their own use case and purpose. So we launched Babelfish for PostgreSQL, which is an open source project. So you get the source code for this translation layer. So if you want to customize this, if you want to add new features, if you want this translation layer to do a bunch of other things for your workload, it's open source. So you can contribute to this project, fork it, do your own thing. It uses the Apache 2.0 license. And in 2021, it will be available on GitHub. So do look out for that. One last announcement with databases, and that's about Amazon Neptune ML. Again, this is in preview, but a lot of data that needs to be stored on the internet right now needs to be stored in the form of graph data. For those of you all, again, not familiar, how social networks bring data and store data is in the form of graphs. So for instance, if you want to advertise to someone who lives in Berlin, rides a bike, likes 90s pop music, and is married, for example, all of these relationships are stored via graphs. And that's what a graph database is. A lot of applications now, not just social networks, use graph databases. And here's where Amazon Neptune ML comes in. Again, like I said, it's all about finding the right tool for your use case. And purpose-built databases are an example of that. Think long and hard if your application needs something like this. And if it does, Amazon Neptune is your thing. You can actually apply machine learning on this graph data, to get better inferences from some of this data that you have. Again, no specialized machine learning experience is required. And you can use something, and to be honest, I'm not an expert on this, but you can use something called graph neural networks to make predictions that can be more than 50% more accurate than a non-graph machine learning. If you read a lot of machine learning papers, though, they do say that finding relationships in data actually improve machine learning predictions. So you can actually use it, especially if you're building things that involve users and their interests, or like different pieces of data that can somehow be related. All right, last few slides before we take a break, and we'll talk about reinventing storage. I think this is fantastic because S3 is one of the oldest AWS services out there. It's one of the most widely used and most versatile services out there, but we're still making improvements to S3 to be able to serve our customers. For instance, we launched this new capability called Storage Lens. And to the best of my knowledge, this is the first cloud storage analytics solution which actually provides this. It gives you a single view of object storage usage and activity in an entire organization. So think of like data lake customers who use S3 to store large shared data sets, across hundreds of accounts and buckets and regions and prefixes using storage. And trust me, if you've been in one of those, like, oh my God, there's too much data here, I'm not sure which region, blah, blah, blah. Think of Storage Lens. It really makes it easy for you. It gives you dashboards to look per region, per storage class, per bucket, and per prefix. So you can really drill down and look and maintain and keep track of all of this data very easily. You also get recommendations which are personalized for that account to reduce your storage costs or to apply data protection best practices. Trust me, I need something like that. I recently goofed up doing something like this for a demo, and offline I might tell you actually what happened, but luckily I was able to roll back very quickly. I'll move on from that because it's slightly embarrassing. This feature, which to be fair, we've been asked quite a bit, finally happened. Amazon S3 strong consistency. So you actually get strong read-write consistency for all applications in all regions. No changes required to your data. It's going to be there immediately. There's no impact on performance, no impact on cost, and none of that stuff. We have launched strong consistency. So now, as soon as a new version of an S3 object is uploaded and some other user is trying to access that, they will get the new version and not the previous version. So that's what strong consistency is. so glad that this is here again, something that our customers have asked us for quite a bit, and we have actually delivered. One more S3 launch, which is replication for multi-destination. You can essentially replicate data to multiple AWS regions or multiple buckets in different regions. So customers right now actually do this. They create replica copy of their data manually, but now you can actually use multi-destination to create shared data sets between global teams. Again, makes it a lot easier. I'm sure you have like encryption settings, you have storage classes, and you want to just replicate all of those in different regions based on where your customers are. Something like this replication feature really helps you. And you really reduce your storage costs as well, because you're replicating your objects to a lower priced storage class. So helps you save some costs as well. Two more storage examples before we might wind down. No, a couple more slides. Yeah. EBS. Again, like I said, EC2 is one of our most widely used services. So hence EBS also becomes very popular. Now with EBS IO2 Block Express, quite a mouthful, you get a 4x higher throughput and capacity than the previous IO2. So this is still in preview, but this is again ideal for very large workloads. If you want to run large IO intensive workloads like Oracle, SAP HANA, Microsoft SQL, and SAS Analytics, think about upgrading to EBS IO2 Block Express. Again, moving from your previous one to this is just a simple API call, not too much effort from your parts, and you'll be getting a 4x higher throughput. So I think that's win-win. So do go ahead for that. Lastly, before we wind up and bring the roundtable in, just one slide about reinventing application integration. And that was mainly for message sending. Anyone here use RabbitMQ? It's a managed message broker service for Apache ActiveMQ, which it's a fairly popular open source messaging broker. So we launched Amazon MQ. Again, the benefits of a fully managed service. So it reduces operational overhead for actually managing these different brokers. And while getting something that's open source and easy to use, you get the cost efficiency of an AWS with the scalability of an AWS as well. Because it's fully managed, you can handle administrative tasks like adding patches, changing operating systems, upgrading your messaging software. None of that needs to be done manually and deployed to a whole bunch of instances. So honestly, Amazon MQ for RabbitMQ if you're using this managed message broker service. Anyway, I've droned on for quite a bit. My mouth's quite dry, I need a little water. But I also want to hear from the UG leads. First of all, thanks for having me. So let's have the folks on and let's hear from them and let's answer some questions as to what their thoughts are. And yeah, we have people joining in. Hey, David's here.
Hey, how's it going?
Martha is here, and Frederick's here as well. First of all, David, congratulations.
Thanks. I'm not sure who that is. Thanks for that, son. Yeah, I recently had a child, so I guess you can see me like King Kong battling sleep deprivation versus Godzilla. And I got this cool jersey. It came in the mail. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, somebody was asking about that. It came today at my place. Yeah.
Nice.
All right, guys, can I ask you just to give you like a 10-second introduction, because not everybody might know who you are, and they're ringing my bell at the same time, so sorry for that.
Okay. Delivery guy.
Right.
Yeah, sure, I'll do an introduction. So my name is Maarten Bruntink, living in the Netherlands, and I work for a company called NordCloud, where I have the role of AWS tech lead. So I help a group of cloud architects there to do their work, basically.
Okay, cool. David?
Oh, yeah. So I'm David Webster. I'm from South Africa. I love AWS. I've got 13 AWS certs to show how much I love it. I work for Schuberg Phyllis as the AWS technical practice lead. I get to do a whole bunch of fun stuff, like working with tons of like the AWS teams on fun projects for all of our enterprise customers and stuff. And some non-enterprise customers who are even cooler, like startups and stuff, right? But yeah, that's me.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is a roundtable. Sohan, thank you for the excellent first part of your presentation. I'm already looking forward to the second part. I propose we just dive into the comments and maybe start from the first question, just work our way down. And yeah, Sohan, I propose you take the first thing, and then maybe Martin, David, you can comment, we can share some opinions. I think that'll work best. We still have quite some time left, so we'll see where we end up.
Yep, for sure, for sure. And I want you guys to give your opinions more. I've spoken enough, I think, in the last time.
No, we want to hear more.
All right, so let's start with the first question. I hope I'm not missing any questions. So first, a small plug again. At 5:30, we have the bring your own drink, which is being organized from the Belgian user group, but everybody's welcome. The Zoom link is in the comments if you scroll up. But then the first question. So let's see, except for your trivia questions, which were really nice, Sohan. Yeah, Ben Brits, he's asking, so is there any pricing already known for the smaller outpost?
I'm on mute, sorry. I am not sure actually, Ben. Let me just find out about that. I must be honest, my knowledge on pricing on some of the preview features is not quite there yet. I'll have to find out. So Ben, let me get back to you on that one.
Actually, on that note, I don't know if you saw, like, Corey Quinn had a thing where he was like, what's the most outrageous pricing on an AWS service? My answer to that's going to be AWS Panorama. That thing is crazy. I personally don't know either, but that's kind of a tricksy question, right? I mean, I think that's the problem with with Reinvent. Sometimes you get all these services in preview, you're like, I want to use it now, but sometimes it's a little bit, you still have to wait a little bit. I found that a little bit with Proton, trying to figure out some of the stuff there.
Yeah, and also I think good to know is that for Outpost, for example, you normally would need an enterprise support subscription, so that's already quite expensive. Or expensive, depends on your size, of course, but still. Yeah, so definitely take that into account. It's not just like, okay, I just order one new Outpost for in the closet downstairs, and I'll run it for a year. You need some bigger investments first.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say maybe one day. I mean, it would be cool. I mean, like I often think like, damn, I wish I could get one of these snow devices to play with at home and stuff, right? You know, I want to like kind of measure the frequency of my like geyser or something, you know, have some sensors on that, but maybe one day, yeah. But great tip, Martin. I didn't actually realize that about the enterprise license. Maybe
and enterprise support, yeah.
Yeah, enterprise support, yeah.
Interesting. All right, so how about we move on? Next one. So let's see. I don't know yet. I'm not going to pronounce this user's name. So Sohan, any tips on how to codify Glue Studio scripts and so on? Questions on screen if everything went well in my studio.
Yeah, that's a good question, Faisp. I'm Faisp 11, is that it? FYSP 11, whatever. Yeah. I haven't tried that actually. Again, let me get back to you. Sorry if I'm being anticlimactic with some of these answers right now. But
wouldn't it be easier than just to use regular Glue in that case?
I think that is 100% right. I think with the studio, you actually sit there and it's like just the visual manipulation. But in that case, you probably would just go with the standard Glue and actually create a script for it and just use that as part of your IAC type deal. Yeah.
All right. Well, and this kind person also has another question right after his first one.
Yeah.
So about Lake Formation.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to say these things, so we don't have a date first.
I think everybody who's here signed an NDA. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, but you know how it is. Yeah.
When is it GA? That's the most important thing, right? Obviously.
Yeah. I will. Yeah. Unfortunately, with a lot of the preview things, especially something like Aurora Serverless V2, it is a very ambitious service that we're launching. Even with like say a Proton, it's not in GA, but you can, like Ben said, you can give your feedback in. There's a lot of work going into it, so there's no real like, hey, we're launching this on March 30th or whatever. It's one of those things that I think when it will be ready, you'll hear a lot about it.
Okay, so then let's move on to the next one. So Rogave, can we use our own models created with SageMaker on Amazon Redshift ML, or is it only available using SageMaker Autopilot?
I believe you use it with SageMaker. I don't think it's only available with SageMaker Autopilot. I think that's the point of it. You actually you create them in SageMaker to kind of like with SQL and stuff like that. But it's created in SageMaker. I haven't actually seen in the documentation where it said only with Autopilot myself.
Yeah.
Also, to get back to the Proton, that's a public preview, by the way, so you can use it if you want at the moment. So no need to sign up for anything. It's just be careful before using it in production, I would say. But yeah, you can try it, and I think it's definitely nice to see where that's going, because from what I've understood, there's also the idea to include like more types of infrastructure as code, like Terraform and CDK as well in the end. So if that would work, then you kind of have sort of a more advanced version of Service Catalog, especially for developer workflows. So I think that's kind of a nice way to do it.
I definitely feel him on that one, like because that's definitely a trend I've noticed in AWS now. I'm sure we're gonna Sohan's gonna talk about one of the services later, but there's this thing of like having your application management and your platform management and segregating those responsibilities. Proton is like, I've played with it a little bit, and it's great at that, right? You create your platform guys create an environment, and the cloud formation that's supposed to, like, these services are supposed to run on, and then your application guys kind of actually just fiddle with the services and bump the versions and stuff like that. So it's really cool because it kind of definitely segregates those responsibilities nicely, so your security guys are super happy.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
I kind of have a related question, if I may. I didn't post it in the comments, but I'm kind of interested because all these things happening with containers. It's clear that containers are moving more to the serverless area, but there's still like EKS, there's like ECS, there's Fargate. In combination with those two, then you have indeed, I forgot the new service there, containers on Lambda. How do you kind of see that evolve? So now, what is like the positioning of Amazon, and what is like, what direction do you see that going? I mean, I work for Skyscrapers, Belgian company, where we work mostly with customers who want to do something with containers in some way, and it's becoming much more complicated to get that, to give them an answer. Okay, we'll set up an ECS for you, or set up a Kubernetes for you, or set up a Fargate. It's becoming quite,
Yeah, no, you're right, Frederick, and in the sense that it can be complicated, but the way I see it is it depends where your customer is coming from. A lot of companies already have workflows for containers, etc., right? And then it sort of becomes easy to sort of build in like a container workflow for Lambda or something like that. But if a company is starting from scratch, they don't have any of that stuff, they can build something that can be like event-driven serverless, then maybe Lambda is the way to go. And of course, now you can do like all of those things that we mentioned with Lambda. So yeah, I really think it depends on where your journey is in that process.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that not every company has Kubernetes experts in the house, right? So when you just want to start really simple, run a few services, there are a lot of tools available on ECS as well, like Copilot, for example, and now with Proton, those kind of tools, to just quickly set up a control plane and deploy some services with all native AWS stuff. So yeah, I think that works as well.
I'm itching.
Very well, actually. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm itching. No, I mean, I think this year was huge for AWS. I mean, like, they threw down the gauntlet, right? There was, what's the one thing when every time you use Lambda at an enterprise, they're like, oh, vendor lock-in. Well, not with containers anymore, right? So I mean, that definitely helps one thing. I also think EKS for anywhere and like the EKSD distro stuff, like that plays obviously nice into Grafana and Prometheus services, which are managed now. But it also is a direct challenger to Google Anthos, which is like, getting quite a lot of hype and quite well backed right now. So, but I mean, a slightly different model that, hey, your EKS is kind of, it's not centralized. It's like they all bespoke. But I definitely think that there's a massive trend that AWS is pushing in the container serverless paradigms. And, it's kind of making it harder for people to say, okay, no, I'm not going to use EKS or I'm not going to use Lambda. Now it's like kind of, well, why not?
Yeah. I said this in like our after party after Ferner's talk. I think in general with the cloud, right, it sort of mirrors what's happening in tech in general. Like if you take a look at your mobile phone, in the last 4 or 5 years, the launches haven't been anything that would blow anyone's mind. But the cameras improved slightly, the batteries improved slightly, the software's improved slightly. I think with the cloud, it's not like, whoa, we launched EKS or Lambda, this is something completely new. But a lot of so much cost performance increase, so much these smaller changes, giving purpose-built tools for everything is just that's laying the foundation for this decade, I think, in terms of tech, where now people are like, okay, I have this is meant for what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. So I really think that's the similarity that I'm seeing.
Okay. Maybe this is a bit of an ambitious question, but would you say like each of the various routes towards container solutions is depending on where a company is in their life cycle or the technologies they've adopted or the DevOps maturity that they have? Or
yeah, I mean a bit of all of that. I think it depends on all of that. I think it's not a like, hey, you have to do this sort of conversation. I think that conversation is a lot deeper. And Marta, David, I'm sure having worked in these companies, you all will have similar insights as well. Right?
Yeah, for me, it's weird because containers are super ancient, right? I mean, the open source community loves to reinvent stuff. So it's like being reinvented. I think Docker's dying now and, they're going to like choose something else that's better eventually or something like that, and reinvent that. For me personally, though, using Kubernetes in a lot of big enterprises has always been scary, even with good guys. That's like a super hard thing to set up. When it breaks, it's like you need to get the genius in and he has to sit there and like try change this thing and like cordon this off, and it's always such a finicky thing that I felt, and Kafka was also kind of something that felt like that to me. But when EKS came along and started managing all of those pieces and making that part easier and just like pulling that abstraction away from me, that's heavenly for me. The less I have to think about the hard bits like that and Prometheus and all of those things, the better, I think. So I would imagine, I mean, when you look at it evolutionary, I would say probably Lambda is the best place to start, like Martin said, if you want to do something quick. Now as well, you can, if you've used those Lambda in containers, they're awesome because you can actually have your container on your CLI and you can be running test code against it. So now you can get like feedback as well without having to deploy anything. So I've seen a whole bunch of tools being released for that to kind of create quicker feedback there too, which is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And if you already have your development pipeline in place for containers, then it makes total sense to use the container deployments for that. But what I was also referring to is just plain vanilla ECS instead of EKS. Just not for Lambda, but just get something up and running really quickly. But then again, if you look at, I think, average company, there's still we working with these technologies are maybe a few miles ahead, because if you look at the average company, there's not that much containers going on and serverless going on yet, at least not for the majority of workloads. I think still 80-90% of everything is running in VMs. So from that perspective, there's still a lot to be gained, I would say,
yeah,
and make this a lot easier for everyone to use it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Marta. Yeah, the fact that I think we are right at that cutting edge, we tend to forget that most companies aren't. Like especially that there is a time it will take to change, and of course the pandemic has accelerated it a little bit. But you're absolutely spot on, Marta. Sorry for
yeah, it's just the same as we saw with virtualizations years back, right? So first everybody was scared this doesn't perform, it doesn't work, we don't have the people for it, and now it's a no-brainer, right? So and there's hardly any use case for using physical stuff anymore. So
It's interesting how you can have like be in a specific perspective, because we work mostly with like scale ups, startups, software companies. Actually, there the adoption of like containers is like usually a non-issue. It's like it's there, but then the next paradigm is like serverless. So what you say about a lot of people still being in VMs and like maybe containers, I'm in a different kind of market where containers is like de facto, it has to be there. But then serverless is like the next, horizon.
I agree with that. I see that as well. So for startups, scale-ups, those kind of companies that build something greenfield, then it's easy choice, right? Also, otherwise you will not find the people that want to work for you anyhow. So
absolutely, indeed. Well, we still have a couple of people we meet sometimes that are not on containers yet, are not on serverless yet. So it does happen, but it's more of a minority, I think. Okay, cool. So we have 3 more minutes. What do? There's actually one more question.
Questions. Yeah.
About the job market in the Netherlands. Maybe the last 3 minutes. What do you want to say about something like that? I'm in Belgium, so I can't comment. I'm out of.
Well, I think it's the same everywhere. If you know cloud, then you're welcome everywhere, probably. So it's a competing market, I would say. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure every company in this call right now, Martin, Sohan, all of our companies are looking for more AWS engineers. So one of us up, and I'm sure we can have that chat privately.
Yep, 100%. M. Fahim Rajput, like Martin said, 90% of the companies in the world are still like on VM and their own data centers and stuff. Everyone wants to be on the cloud. Trust me, the cloud market is big all over the world.
Yeah, I agree. Same in Belgium, same actually in Europe. We hire remotely, so it's even, you see it also in the remote hiring. It's the same. It's how do you say this? Candidates market or a hiring? It's a customer market in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I saw another one on the exam discounts from the same person.
Okay. That might be for me, I'm guessing. Well, M. Fahim Rajput, are you a student? If you're a student, I think you do. There is something called AWS Academy and something else, I forget the name, where they work with your universities. So yeah, you can get student discounts. And also at the end, I'll be giving credit codes at the end of today for filling in feedback. So that's another discount you can get on, trying out stuff.
So if you pass the cloud practitioner, you'll get a coupon for a 50% discount on your next exam, and that's a pretty good way to do it.
Exactly, I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah. David is just showing off that he's done 13 out of 13. David, we get it.
All right. So does any of you still want to say or add something? Because we're gonna go on to the second part. It's almost 4:15.
No, I just want to thank Sohan already for his great talk so far. So I'm looking forward to the next part.
Keep up the good work, Sohan.
Thanks for having me, guys, honestly.
Yeah, so Sohan, I think I'll be passing on the stage to you. But before I do, just one more thing. I'd like to remind everybody again, please do ask your questions in the comments. You see, we do get back to them, and they actually ensue into interesting conversations between the people on stage. At 5:15, we have the next roundtable where we'll go over the content that was presented right now by, again, will be presented by Sohan. Is there anything else I want to say? No, that's the questions. Oh, and the people that will be there will be Walter, he'll be back, Angelo, and Ben will be the people talking. So yeah, thank you, David and Martin, for being here. And
no problem. Thank you.
So
let's go, Bull.
Yep.
Hit it.
Okay, thanks, Frederic, for doing that. Hopefully my audio is still good. I always check, especially with StreamYard. And
don't forget your slides.
Yeah, my slides are up, Frederic. You have to hit the show button.
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah. Sweet. So for those of you all who didn't win prizes earlier, I have a couple more trivia questions, so be vigilant. Anyway, back to reInvent and the theme of reinvention. A big key part of reInvent were all the launches about AI/ML. Again, I told you, I come from a bit of a background working in Alexa and chatbots. I love emerging technology, so I was very keen on all of the launches at AI/ML. I say this quite a bit, but I'm going to repeat it. You know how 10 years ago, companies advertised themselves as, hey, we are cloud first. Sorry, 10 years ago, people said we are mobile first. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, people said, hey, we are cloud first. If you go way back, like maybe to the early 90s, companies said things like, hey, we have a database. Right now, we assume every company has a database, is on the cloud, and of course is mobile first. Now companies are saying things like we are AI first, we are the world's first AI startup, we are the world's first AI whatever. In 5 to 10 years time, probably closer to 5, every company, every app, everyone will be using AI or ML in some level or the other. What AI ML is often gets glorified in the media as like, oh, this, this sentient being, but what it often is, just like deploying, getting intelligence out of data. And so I think this part is very key. And there was a specific keynote for the first time, a machine learning keynote at reInvent. And week 2, Swami Subramaniam, the VP of, I forget what's his exact designation, but he's a VP at AWS, essentially gave an entire keynote only on machine learning. And he spoke about a few things that I'll talk about. He spoke about the freedom to invent. And if you look back on some of the slides that I showed you, he spoke about the freedom to invent, the shortest path to success, and the fact that good ideas can come from anywhere. And I'm just going to highlight some of these so that you actually see it. I think this plays into the theme that machine learning is not restricted to just a data scientist or someone with a PhD or someone sitting in this lab with like this huge supercomputer around them. The fact that good ideas can come from anywhere, the fact that your company needs the shortest path to success, the fact that everyone should have the freedom to invent means you need ML at different layers, at different parts of the organization. You saw machine learning talking to Redshift and your data analytics and your databases. You saw bits of ML in like an S3 where you get recommendations on cost, price, performance. You saw ML in different places like this. And honestly, that leads to the fact that good ideas can come from anywhere and anyone should be able to invent using this. He also spoke a little bit about this, which I think is key, which is solving real business problems using machine learning. Maybe 5 years ago, machine learning was sort of like, hey, let's do this cool thing with ML and get this cool insight. But that really wasn't a business problem as such. And a lot of companies and a lot of individuals made, I won't call it a mistake, but it's a new technology. You play around with it, you do something cool. But at the end of the day, it didn't solve a business problem. Now we're in the stage where we have the tools, we have the infra, we have the frameworks, we have all and the data to really solve real business problems with machine learning. So keep these things in mind, and we'll see how some of the AI ML launches really tie back to these particular themes. One of the big launches was SageMaker Data Wrangler. Now this I'm sure you've seen the expectation versus reality meme, like expectation, what people think I do versus what I actually do. If you fit that meme to a data scientist, the expectation is people doing like this cool coding and getting these amazing like insights and all of that. But the reality is data scientists spend 60 to 70% of their time cleaning up their data. They're preparing their data because if that data is not good, even the best data scientists in the world can't do much. So a large chunk of their time, and I work with some of them, is spent on preparing data. And if you're a data scientist or if you have a team of data scientists, you would have faced the same thing. Hence, we have launched this service, which is generally available, called SageMaker Data Wrangler, which essentially is all about preparing your data for ML models. So again, just with few clicks, you can select and query your data. You can easily transform this data with some built-in data transformations. And of course, you get visualizations as well. So you can do things like accelerate your data cleansing, you can do exploration and data visualization, all using Data Wrangler. So I think it's very cool. Now, you can actually also build your own transformations in PySpark, SQL, or Pandas, which are fairly commonly used in the machine learning world. Few of you might have this question saying, hey, this seems a little familiar. Didn't we just talk about this? And in a way we did. Glue Data Brew does something similar to Data Wrangler, but they are for slightly different things. Glue, you're doing it for ETL and that sort of thing, whereas with Data Wrangler, you're actually preparing data for machine learning models. Again, slightly, we talk about purpose-built and right tools for the right job. So they sort of do similar things in terms of philosophy, but they are meant for two very different things. There was also the launch of Amazon SageMaker Feature Store. Essentially, if you're not familiar from that world, a feature, think of it as an attribute or a property model that is used during training and inference to make a prediction. So if you want to make a prediction as, okay, how much will my sales be in Q4 2021? You use certain attributes, right? You use what your previous sales were, what your discounts are, what the market is like, whatever, all of that stuff. And those are different features that you would use. Now, what happens is typically there's centralized repository of data, and different teams use this data for their machine learning models, for inference, for training, and so on. So this feature store actually makes it easy for multiple teams to work on the same set of data in this centralized repository that's fully managed. So it takes care of things like metadata, data about your data, and then cataloging all of that data. And for different teams to actually discover these features and use them in their own models, in their inference, in their training, and whatever. And the good thing is it integrates with another new feature called SageMaker Pipelines. Now, few of y'all might be people who have been to a lot of AWS events or watch like Dev Day and things like that. A good chunk of talks, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, and my colleagues will hate me for this, so sorry guys, but a lot of talks were about building pipelines for your machine learning models. And I know my colleagues have actually done a lot of this, like exploring and prepping data, experimenting with different algorithms, but basically building CI/CD pipelines for all of this. Because, well, it is a little complicated, and hence the talks, a lot of people asked us, how do I do this? Well, we launched SageMaker Pipelines, which actually is the first purpose-built CI/CD pipeline for machine learning. So really, you don't have to break your head and worry about that. You can accelerate that ML development process using SageMaker pipelines. And it is purpose-built for machine learning, so it's not any other solution. So you can automate different steps of the machine learning workflow, including loading your data, transforming your data, training, tuning, and the final deployment. So again, for all of these phases of machine learning, building, testing, deploying, you can use SageMaker pipelines for CI/CD. This, of course, makes more sense for something like machine learning where there is continuous learning anyway. So adding an element of CI/CD and making that easier will improve the quality of your machine learning models in any case. Again, though, not every team typically has, or every company or org has an entire team of data scientists or PhDs. So we introduced something called SageMaker Jumpstart, which is lets you easily and quickly bring machine learning applications to market. So you get 15 pre-built solutions for very common ML use cases, and you can use them pretty much straight out of the box or choose to customize them for your use case. Now, I think this is very powerful, and I think I have some personal experience with this. So I used to work, I'm dropping that quite a bit today, I realize. I used to work for the Alexa team. And of course, the Alexa cloud service has one sort of natural language processing system. You can customize it a little bit, but largely you use that system and build around it. So you build skills, a voice app for it. I often got questions like, hey, I want to use the system, but customize it for my very, very specific use case. So we'd have slots, and I'm not going into details, but about things like airports, animals, food names, cities, all of these common data sets. But someone would be like, hey, I have a delivery system in India. I want to customize it for Indian food dish names. And we'd be like, you can, but it might not work as well because, one size fits all is usually a little difficult when it comes to machine learning models. So that's really where something like Jumpstart comes into the picture, where you can take a model for something like, and these are some available, like recommendations, computer vision, extracting data, natural language processing, demand forecasting, fraud detection. You can take these ready-to-use models and customize them for your own use case. So that guy would customize it for Indian food dish names, and they'd be able to build a very good ordering system using natural language processing, using something like a Jumpstart pre-built solution. So do check it out if you want to get started quickly and you have a fairly common use case with machine learning, or the other way around, where I'm sure you do one of these things in your company or for your customers. So do check out Jumpstart. See how machine learning can actually improve the performance and use a built-in solution. We're going from machine learning to actual implementation. I'm sure everyone watching writes code at some point of time, even if it's like a SQL line of code or a bash script or some hardcore React front-end cool thing you're building. All of us write code somewhere. In companies, when you're writing code, there usually is a fairly stringent code review process. You write code, you check it in, it's peer reviewed, and then a team lead checks it in. If all is good, it's merged into the main branch. That's the usual workflow. There is a service that we launched, I think it was last year, called Code Guru, which does two things. There's Code Guru Reviewer, which checks your code and sees where you've goofed up. This could be things like where there could be deadlocks or just bad usage of code, bad memory allocation and things like that. And there was Code Guru Profiler, which was essentially looking for the most expensive lines of code, which is to optimize your processes. Code Guru Reviewer was only for Java, but this year we launched it for Python. So again, it really ties in well. I'm sure most of you all use Python for writing code above your machine learning. So use Code Guru. Think of it this way: it doesn't replace that team lead who's doing all of this, but it augments that team lead and makes it that much more better. So a team lead, a human, typically might not capture every bug in your code or every inefficient way of doing something, but Code Guru can actually do so. Code Guru's brother is DevOps Guru. This is something that we actually launched this year, and it's still in preview, but all you DevOps folks out there, I'm sure you're waiting for this. Think of it as like this cool minority report thing where it can actually predict where you can see errors as well. So it obviously detects operational issues. So there are two types of issues it detects. Something called reactive, where you've deployed something, you have like a workflow and it says here, these are where you can go wrong. But it also gives you proactive recommendations saying, hey, here are places things might go wrong, so you might want to check it out. You can also, for those of you all working in DevOps, I'm sure you get a lot of alarms and basic fatigue, because of all of this, getting alerts saying server down, blah, blah, blah. So DevOps Guru helps reduce that noise. It helps you cut through the clutter and gives you very, very precise recommendations on what to do. If you don't believe me, I'm actually just going to show you a quick demo. So this is what the dashboard actually looks like. It says, okay, we have analyzed like say 300 metrics. Here are all the stacks that we're analyzing right now. Okay, so there are reactive insights and proactive insights. Again, I remember I told you what the two are. So I've given the example of two different stacks, and I've taken a simple Lambda create, read, update, delete type DynamoDB thing, very simple. So let's take a look at what types of metrics that you actually see. And you see something that says stack lifetime MTTR right there. Let me just... So what this MTTR stands for, if you're not familiar, is mean time to repair. Very often if something goes wrong in your stack, it takes a certain time period to repair it. And that MTTR can actually determine whether you're back up quickly and if you give a consistent user experience to your users. So the stack lifetime MTTR will actually say that. So we can also take a look at how it shows some of these details. So I'm just going to do that right now. As you can see, it says right now, no proactive insight. So it's not predicting anything, but it has given 3 reactive insights based on how you have deployed your stacks and how you have defined your workflows. Again, this is still in preview. So I take a look, okay, last 1 week, we've had 2 reactive insights and the mean time to repair has been 7 minutes. So let's check what the reactive insights are. And as you can see a couple of errors there. It says Lambda, some error, blah, blah, blah. These are aggregated metrics over a certain period of time. And as you can see, it says duration P50. There's I'm actually slightly colorblind, so telling the difference between red and green is tough, but it says, okay, this part, there was some sort of error, so hence something went wrong. And it was downtime from 10:50 to 10:58. So your mean time to repair was like 7 to 8 minutes. These were the errors. There was an integration latency, blah, blah, blah. And it's showing you where something actually went wrong and how long it took for it to be back up. It also evaluates the aggregated metrics by following these events in your AWS account. So there it's looked at your ops event, your stack, and it's shown you where a potential error could be. So essentially that's what DevOps Guru does, looks at your workflows and gives you predictive and reactive predictions or insights about how your DevOps processes are going. So speaking about monitoring and looking at things that could go wrong, organizations all over, especially across all industries, you're really looking to improve your efficiency in your business through tech and automation. I mean, that's why we're here, honestly, right? And these challenges differ, but being able to identify things and change them is actually very, very vital, which is why there are rather 3 new features launched, all of them called Amazon Lookout. The first one is Amazon Lookout for metrics. All organizations here, we have metrics that are coming in. That could be something like, hey, why is my sales revenue dipped suddenly? Or what happened to my customer acquisition rates? How do you actually find out answers to this? This service, Amazon Lookout for Metrics, actually does that. So it looks at a lot of data and it looks at anomalies. Why did this happen that shouldn't have otherwise happened? And it tries to identify root causes and why this happened. Again, we have used 20 plus years of experience at looking at this data at Amazon, and we have given that to you as a service. Honestly, that's a pattern you'll see, things like fraud detection, forecasting, all these services. Essentially, we have taken the knowledge we have gained by running Amazon.com for like 25 years right now, more than that, yeah. And we have given that as a service. So Lookout for Metrics is specifically with customer metrics or business metrics that are coming in and why they're going wrong. Similarly, there's something called Lookout for Vision. And this uses computer vision to actually look for defects and anomalies in visual representations. This could include everything from missing components in products to defects in products like a t-shirt that is defective, to damage in vehicles or structure, to production line irregularities, or even minuscule defects in silicon chips. So say you're a company like Nike, you're making like thousands of t-shirts. Very often, the QA part of manufacturing is actually what slows it down. Thanks to the advancements in tech in like the 70s and 80s, the manufacturing bit has been solved. That goes like clockwork in most industries. Where it really slows down is the QA, because very often there are humans doing it. You take small sample sizes, check it, do all of that. It is tedious, it is cumbersome. Hence, something like Amazon Lookout for Vision can actually automate that entire process for you. In fact, I'm actually going to show you a quick demo of how this works. And we're going to take that example of that silicon wafer that I showed you. So photos of this where there's a scratch on one side. You can see there is a scratch there. There are a bunch of other, like, okay, this one has one chip that's slightly bent, so it's not going to work. But will a human be able to identify this 100 out of 100 times? One of the tiny screws are slightly scuffed. Let's see another defective piece perhaps. Okay, no, these are the 3 defective. So you feed in photos of silicon wafers that are completely fine from like an S3 database or whatever. So I'm opening up Lookout for Vision. I'm getting started, and I'm going to specify an S3 bucket where all these images are actually stored. And you create a project. Yeah, just created a bunch already. You just add any project name. Demo test. I feel demo and test and hello world are the most commonly used names. Okay, you set up a folder on S3. Honestly, all this is simple stuff. I don't need to be explaining this to you all. You guys are experts. But here's where all your images are of all of your silicon chips. And we'll feed these images to Lookout for Vision to see how it works. So we're creating a data set, and we're importing it straight from S3 bucket. You can create your own, but you can use a single data set for this demo. We import an S3 bucket, and we give, you can upload images from your computer as well. Specify the S3 bucket URI. Here's the key part. In your image folder, you say, these are the anomalies, these are the normal ones, and that's how it will actually classify. So you create your data set, usually takes a while. Let's open it up. Okay, first step after doing that is to train your model. So here are all the images that are named, labeled, etc. And it's already detected based on your folder structure as anomaly and normal. So you can actually train your model now based on those two, and it will label each of these images. So you'll get a model with training complete. So let's take a look at that model. So you get a precision as 100%, everything's done. Now in filters, you can actually see predicted as normal or predicted as anomaly. So you have 14 chips that are predicted as normal where everything looks completely fine. So you can actually open those images and see that those chips are totally fine. You can actually run a trial detection as well now. So you're uploading new images to see if it will be predicted as normal or anomaly. Just running a trial. I'm just going to upload from my computer, and I'm going to say detect anomaly. Okay, I'm going to choose files. Yeah, all of these images. Choosing all of them. Okay, maybe not all, but few of them. And I will upload these images. So I'm uploading 5 images, and let's see what Lookout for Vision actually tells me about these particular images. Takes a while it's detecting anomalies. So let's see what it says. It's predicted all 5 as anomalies, and let's take a look. In the first one, you can actually see one of the chips is slightly bent. There's a confidence score attached to each of these anomalies as well, and you can actually verify these machine learning predictions. So you're augmenting that experience with the human just to make sure everything is good. So you're saying correct, incorrect, etc. I think this is very cool. This also works for things like cloth material. My colleague did an example with cloth material using a data set. Works really well. In preview, but do keep a lookout. And similarly, there is an Amazon lookout for equipment. Typically, you have like entire workflows in industries, and you install sensors and all of these different machines for data connectivity, but lookout for equipment actually detects abnormal machine behavior in real time. So you're almost making sure that if there's a defect in your supply chain or in your production, almost in real time, you get an alert saying, hey, something's wrong with this machine or this printing, do check it out. It is specifically developed for certain assets like turbines, motors, pumps, and the like. So check it out. Keeping on the theme of industries, I'm not an expert on this, but we launched something called Amazon Monitron, which is an end-to-end solution for equipment maintenance. This essentially is a lot of hardware. So you get sensors, you get gateway devices that you connect to your industrial equipment. You can literally buy this off of Amazon. There are different things you can buy. They cost anywhere between $140 to $715. You hook this up to your equipment, and it gives you machine learning based insights about what's going wrong with your equipment. Fairly cool. All right, so that was a lot of the AI ML announcements. Let's talk a bit about reinventing observability. Observability, I think, is one of those things that we should be speaking about a lot more in these talks, in all cloud and big business type discussions, because it is so important. For those of you all who are not familiar, observability gives you the effect or gives you the ability to detect, investigate, and remediate when something goes wrong. Werner Vogels always says, everything fails all the time. So you have to have the ability to bounce back. The first step is observability, where first you actually detect. And the big problem we see is that customers don't detect when the problem happens. They detect it a lot later. By the time the mean time to repair and to get back is already quite a bit. So detecting issues as soon as they happen is so important. As important is investigation, to actually figure out what went wrong, so that once you do so, you can get back to either roll back to a previous state or upgrade a patch so that your customers don't have a broken experience. And lastly, of course, and that is also remediation, where you're upgrading it, you're rolling back, you're putting a patch and fixing whatever problem you had. Keeping in mind observability, AWS launched 3 new services. David mentioned some of these. So the first one is AWS Distro for Open Telemetry. Few of you might not be familiar, but Open Telemetry is open source observability. It's a set of software, tools, what else? SDKs and so on. Very, very widely used in the cloud community and by cloud native applications. So with an AWS distro for this open source, you get the best of both worlds. You're getting something that's secure, it's production ready, and it's open source. And the great thing is we heard from our customers, and this is not a fork of that particular project, but we're actually contributing it upstream as well. So we are sort of strengthening an already awesome open source project like Open Telemetry. Honestly, if you're not using this for your observability, do check it out. We also announced Amazon Managed Service for Prometheus, which is again fully managed Prometheus compatible monitoring and alerting service. Again, makes it easy to scale to monitor containerized applications. We spoke a bit about containers, and Prometheus is actually used quite a bit by companies that do containerized deployment for observability and for monitoring and for alerting. So if you're using EKS or ECS for your containers, do think of using Amazon Managed Service for Prometheus. And lastly, Grafana. Again, David, shout out, you mentioned this. You also want powerful data visualizations for your builders and for your operators and business leaders. Getting those business insights, of course, is important. Grafana is very widely used, so you can run Grafana at scale and securely by using Amazon Managed Service for Grafana. So it comes with interactive data visualization, pre-built dashboards for analysis, for monitoring, logging, tracing, and across multiple data sources, including third-party ISVs. So very, very powerful again. We're going to take a quick break and do another trivia question, and this time it's a two-parter. Listen carefully. AWS was officially relaunched in March 2006, combining 3 initial service offerings. 3 initial service offerings. If one was SQS, what was the other 2? Again, the 3 initial service offerings of AWS, if one was SQS, what were the other 2? You need to get both correct, maybe. Oh man, we have so many right answers. Rothschild has said S3 and SNS. Sorry, Rothschild, you just missed it. Lee versus has said S3 EC2. Rick has said EC2 and S3. TopJoe2 has said S3 EC2, and JK Taja has said S3 EC2. Well, that is the right answer. Good job, everyone. The first to get it was Lee_VS. So Lee_VS, hit me up and you will get a prize. But good answer, everybody. Really well done. It was indeed EC2 S3. The first service still though was SQS, or simple queue service. All right, so we have spoken a bit about AI/ML and observability. Let's talk about reinventing infrastructure, as we come towards the end of the deck. For instance, and these are some of the basic things, again, that probably should be spoken more about. Sometimes the cooler launches get a lot of airtime, but let's very quickly talk about the launch of AWS Network Firewall. Essentially, this is a managed service that makes it easy to deploy network protections for your VPCs. If I'm sure you're deploying some sort of virtual private clouds, cybersecurity and security online right now is so important. So do take a look at AWS Network Firewall. It's a very flexible tool, if you ask me, because it allows you to define different rules for your firewall, gives you fine-grained control over your network traffic that's coming in and going out. So do check out AWS Network Firewall. There's also AWS Gateway Load Balancer. if I have to really simplify, think about it as a load balancer for your third-party applications. So suppose you're using AWS Marketplace to use third-party applications in your workloads, you can use Gateway Load Balancer to sort of reduce the complexity and distribute the load for these third-party applications. Again, super simple to use. You can create simple and streamlined network design with fewer moving parts to manage, and it's supported by all the leading appliance vendors, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, we are coming towards the end of today's talk. We have about 15 minutes more to go, and then we'll do the round table. Let's talk a bit about reinventing management and governance. So we think that building infrastructure is only a tiny part of an IT manager's time. Again, we talk a lot about the building part and containers and serverless and all of that, but a lot of time is actually spent on managing existing infra. CTOs and team leads and DevOps folks, you will identify with this for sure. How much time you actually spend managing all of this, especially the larger your organization is. AWS Systems Manager is a service for precisely that, where you have this single pane to actually control and to get data about how everyone is using their installation. So we launched 3 tools, I think. Yeah, three services. The first one is called AWS Systems Manager, Change Manager. These names are quite a mouthful. I should have a chat with the guys who named this. Anyway, so this is basically talks about change management for AWS and on-prem. Essentially, to explain how this works, your IT teams need to take care of operational actions across hundreds of systems. And in a company like Amazon's, it's hundreds of thousands of systems. And at the same time, they need to maintain security, safety, compliance, blah, blah, blah. And remember, when it comes to security, it's the weakest link that always is the problem. So you have to maintain that high level of compliance throughout. To do so, you use AWS Systems Manager, which makes it super easy to deploy these changes, etc. We launched Change Manager to basically see the different operational changes with the best practices and safety practices built in. So any change management that you want to deploy to these systems, you can use Systems Manager, Change Manager. You can also audit all of this. Again, in larger organizations, all of this needs to be audited to, for logging and for metrics and so on. So Change Manager gives you all of that. Similarly, if you want something to manage your entire fleet of servers, you get AWS Systems Manager, Fleet Manager. So this gives you, again, another consistent GUI experience to organize and manage your entire fleet of servers that are running both on AWS and on-premise. And essentially, you can do things like disk and file exploration, you can do log management, Windows registry operations, user management. And the best part is you don't have to remotely connect to these VMs to monitor them. So you're able to actually do all of these operations without having to connect to each of your VMs. So yeah, if you're managing a ton of servers, this is the way to go. We also launched Catalog App Registry, which essentially is to create application definitions across all of those systems that you're managing. And essentially, of course, you need to push each of these application installations to your systems. So App Registry actually keeps a track of every applications you've installed, including the metadata for these applications. Now, these are typically stored, in as JSON files. After you've done this, you can use Systems Manager, Application Manager to really manage it. You discover application resources across multiple AWS servers. You can actually view operational data for all of these applications, again, in a single view. And you can do things like CloudWatch alarms, resource configurations, basically manage all of these applications set across all of these hundreds of systems using Systems Manager, Application Manager. The last thing I want to mention about management and governance is this new service which is coming soon, which I think is super interesting, and it's called AWS Fault Injection Simulator. A lot of you all would have heard of this term called chaos engineering. If I'm not mistaken, and I might be wrong here, but I think it was Netflix that really pioneered this concept, where they would intentionally throw in faults into their system to see how their infra would react to it. And this is a great way to actually make sure you build resilient and highly available systems. Nothing will simulate like the experience of it being live and getting a lot of traffic, but you do the best you can by actually throwing in these errors to see how your systems respond to it. Again, as Werner Vogel says, everything fails all the time, so you have to be ready. So with this new service, which is still coming soon, it's a fully managed chaos engineering service on AWS, which I think is really cool. So you can improve your performance and resiliency, and you can do this with the safety of, I'm not going to call it a sandbox, but you're able to safely run these experiments without it causing all sorts of problems to your infrastructure. If you've done any of the AWS game days, you would actually have seen these chaos elements in, and then manually you had to, like really get your systems up and running. But imagine if you can build for systems that could react really well to, chaos elements thrown in. Last trivia question of the day, and it had to be something about Dr. Werner and something that's little Dutch. So in 2019 keynote, Werner Vogels wore the t-shirt of which underground Dutch hip-hop group? A lot of people online, and I know Walter Heck is watching and is a fan of this group, so Walter, you're not allowed to answer this, but which, okay, Zaman one got the, Zaman one, yes. Even though you spelt it wrong, I'll be very generous. It was indeed this group called Osdorp Posse. Webster 34 and Damos 1972 also got it, but Zaman one was little faster. So yeah, good job, Zaman. Get in touch and you will get a prize. Okay, we're almost to the end. And David, I'm going to come to you to show your demo. But before that, let me quickly talk about reinventing contact centers. I think during the pandemic, this is one vertical that was super transformed. And the reason is, if you've worked with contact centers, you'll find that the tech there is still very much from 20 years ago. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's a legacy thing and those systems have been there for so long, it's hard to change. But with everyone working from home, we had to, these contact centers were transformed almost overnight. And here's really where Amazon Connect comes through. And it is a service that has seen a huge amount of growth in the last year. Again, thanks mainly to the pandemic, but also thanks to how forward-looking it is. It's not like the older contact centers. Of course, it's built on AWS infra, etc. And it's so easy to build cool AI services into a service like this. Like I've personally built one and it's on YouTube, where you can get real-time translations and text analysis of both the speaker and the receiver. In fact, we went ahead and built a lot of, it wasn't my code, I'm just connecting two things here, but we actually released features for this. So you have something like Voice ID, which actually authenticates a user, and you can build a customer profile. So if a customer is calling you 3-4 times and they've had a bunch of interactions, you can build a profile based on that. You can also give real-time wisdom or analytics about the customer, what their previous problems are, how they've been using it. And you can get analytics powered by machine learning using this thing called Contact Lens. So really, it is the next generation contact center. And if you're using this, please do check out Amazon Connect. I think it's highly powerful. We also launched, and I'm super proud of this particular service, because I think it's cool. It is Cloud Shell, which is command line access to AWS resources directly from your browser. So in fact, if you log into your AWS account, you can see a small button there that you click and you can instantly get CLI access to your entire account. The good thing is there's no configuration required. There's nothing. It's automatically configured with your credentials. It comes with popular tools pre-installed. So you don't have to sit and set up we all know that's painful. There are also cool things like adding dark theme, light theme, etc. By the way, is everyone here team light theme or dark theme? I am team dark theme. I'd love to hear what all of y'all are. So David actually said he'd love to show a demo of this. So David, if you can quickly do that perhaps. And if you're around. David is a light theme person. Zaman is a dark. I find most people, Lee says gray. Come on, Lee, don't lie. Okay, David, over to you. You might be on mute, David.
There we go. Thanks, Sohan. So when I heard Vanna Vogel speaking about Cloud Shell at reInvent 2020, I definitely was interested. He described it as being another abstraction like workspaces. To me, I was like, oh, kind of cool. Like I said earlier, there's a trend with the guys who are managing the infra and the guys who are doing the apps on the infra. And Cloud Shell is this pre-authenticated service. So like Sohan said, that means you've already logged into the console, or you've been supplied, or through SSO, you've been supplied some kind of STS credentials or something like that to get into the console. You then click on this little button at the top here and you are transported to a wonderful Cloud Shell screen. And I kind of want to show you guys something cool I figured out. Originally, so basically what is Cloud Shell? It has like your AWS CLI on it. It has your...
David, can you zoom in a little bit, perhaps?
Let me check here. Yeah, no, let's do that. Zoom. Why is this not working here?
Okay, never mind. Doesn't the command plus button work?
I have no idea why it's kind of weirdly accepting it as... There we go. I think I can do that. Yeah. Can you check it?
Yes, that's better.
Oh, good. So it has a whole bunch of cool tools on it. It comes with all of the AWS good stuff, right? So it has like your AWS version 2 CLI, Elastic Beanstalk. The same is true for SAM if you want to use it, or even your ECLS CLI, so it really comes with, everything on it. It also comes with obviously Bash, which I'm using now. It has your Z shell, if you want to change that. And it even has your PowerShell, which is pretty cool. So you can use whichever shell you feel most comfortable with. When it comes to the actual shells, you also get on your Bash shell and your Z shell, you'd actually get your Python and Node already installed. And when it comes to PowerShell, you get like .NET Core already installed. It's also pretty cool because security-wise, you get your home directory. So in your actual home directory over here, you get a 1 gigabyte storage that's encrypted by KMS. You get sudo privileges. So if you want to sudo install Nano instead of working with Vim, which is installed by default, you can. If you break anything, you can actually just go here and delete your AWS Cloud home directory, and then restart Cloud Shell, and that'll bring everything to scratch. And then something that's really important, and this is kind of the point of what I wanted to show you guys, was it's all controlled by IAM permissions. So you'll see like download file is like Cloud Shell : download file, so you can use the principle of least privilege on these guys who are accessing this. And when I checked the AWS documentation, it was all like, no, the one limitation is that you can't access resources in a VPC. So here's where I'm going to show you guys something cool. So what I did was I first installed Session Manager, which is basically, as Sohan pointed out, it has a whole bunch of features for managing machines. And what I can actually do is I can say, hey, let me start a session, and I'm going to make my target one of these instances that's in a private VPC. So here I am. I'm actually using Cloud Shell to get into a EC2 instance in a private subnet, in a private VPC. So I'd be able to speak to a database or use it as a bastion. And the cool thing is, and this is the really subtle thing, no secret or access keys anywhere. And it separates the platform and application developers very nicely. And that's all I wanted to show you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Dude, that was awesome. Thank you so much, David. You're a star, as always. As Scripty saying developers. Yeah, I know that reference. You have to check out that video if you haven't. Just type developers on YouTube. You'll see quite something. Yeah, cool. All right, so almost at the end, just a couple of more slides before, and then we'll pull in everyone else. So I quickly want to talk to you, especially the developers here, about Amazon Location Service. Typically, I think most people have been using a certain API if they needed location in their app or web app or mobile app. So Amazon's actually launching their own location service, and this is accessing data from S3 and here through a consistent API. I think this is cool. I've not played with it yet, to be honest, but you get easy access to high quality map data. It is cost effective. And of course, you're still within, using AWS services. So yeah, do check it out if you're using location in your apps. I just want to end with, talking about something slightly different from tech. I think that where the world is in right now, with climate change and sustainability, I really think it's cool that all tech companies, especially the cloud providers, are doing a lot sustainability first. And in the infrastructure keynote, Peter DeSantis, who's the head of infra, spoke a lot about how AWS is taking care of sustainability, renewable energy, and water conservation. We in fact have an entire new portal, so just Google AWS sustainability and you will see a lot of details if that interests you, and it rightly should. There was this graph about how a typical baseline enterprise's data center actually consumes so much more power, and working on the AWS cloud will probably consume about 88% lower carbon footprint than a traditional data center. And I think that's really important. And it's great to see companies like AWS take that step forward towards sustainability. In fact, we also announced that we are 5 years ahead of our goal of being, carbon neutral. I think that's the term. Yeah, the reducing, 100% on renewable energy by 2025. Our original goal was in 2030. And also, Amazon is the largest corporate procurer of renewable energy in the world, and has enabled over 6.5 gigawatts of this. So a lot of steps being taken in that space. Since we have Werner, I just want to end with the last slide. He gave the final keynote, and he spoke about these things. And I think if you look at each of these, I think they connect really well to all that we've spoken about earlier. He spoke about reducing friction with tools. And, I'm going to take my time with this. Reducing friction with tools. And today we spoke a little bit about how there are purpose-built tools and services for what you need, as opposed to you making a whole bunch of different changes and workflows to suit the few options that were available. This is so vital. I think this enables things like automated scaling. Using fully managed services often does that. I think as a business owner or as a tech person in a company, you shouldn't think of only a simple cost, for using like an open source versus something fully managed, but rather look at a total cost of ownership. A lot of times at sessions and open hours, people ask me, hey, give me some tips on saving money in AWS. And I think they expect a sort of, like use spot instances on EC2 type answer, whereas very often it's also about the strategy. Like using a fully managed service will save you money in the course of say 3 years, because you don't have to hire like people and patching and tooling to actually manage that. So in the course of 3 years or 5 years, you're saving so much more money. Ferna also spoke about chaos, engineering, resilience, and metrics and observability. Things will fail. That's the nature of tech in general. But it is how you react to that and how you get back from that and how you get the logs and make sure it doesn't happen again. That's what's important. So really take a look at making your system more highly available and highly resilient. He ended with ML and quantum computing by saying things like, machine learning is what everyone should be looking at right now. And I told you that by 5 years, every app, every workload will use ML in some form or the other. The future, the next step really is quantum computing. And there is a service like Amazon Bracket, for example, which I'll be honest, I don't understand. I've tried, but quantum computing is something that you should be looking at if you're really thinking 5 to 10 years down the line. So really a lot to digest there. Anyway, that comes to the end of my talk. We'll be bringing in people. Before that, though, I want to say a couple of things. One is please fill in the feedback. I'm going to put a QR code. But second, thank you so much for staying for 2 hours. I know we all have screen fatigue and we are living in a difficult time. I'd love to do this in person with you all and share a beer. And I'm sure all of you all feel the same. But I think this is the next best thing, and we should be grateful that we have this. So thank you so much for being with me till the end. I'll call the user group folks right now, but I'll also put up this for feedback. You can go to eventbox.dev and either enter the code or use the QR code. Do give your feedback. You will receive a credit code with that. And yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Sohan. That was really insightful. It's good to see all of the announcements in one go after spending seeing them spread out across 3 weeks. It's really good to see them all at the same time. So and I also always like seeing them one more time about a month and a half later, because half of them you forgot about already, and they're like, oh, wait a second, I made a note to myself that we should do something about this. So it's good to see these things. Let me see if we can make, no, I don't want to be that big. Go away.
The camera loves you, Walter.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but hey. When it comes to questions, we don't necessarily have that many questions, but we do have with us Ben Brits from the Belgian group, and we have Angelo from the Dutch group. Do you want to both say some things about what you've seen and what your feedback is?
I really like the overview, so thanks for that. Sorry for speaking a little bit earlier, Angelo. I think I got there first. I like you said, it's really nice to get this whole overview condensed in 2 hours. And I'm still processing a little bit, thinking if there is anything that you missed or not. I don't think so. I think you got almost everything in there, which is quite impressive. I really, like you said, it's really nice to get this whole overview and to be able to put them into categories and group them together a little bit.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, folks. Honestly, this was a lot of fun.
I think was a great recap. Honestly, was a strange reinvent for those who are used to attend in person, but this time, with cause the coronavirus, it's not possible. So it's nice to have this kind of way to meet and discuss about the reinvent. So thank you, Sohan. Very, very interesting.
Which was your favorite topic, Frederick? Let's ask you.
Well, I'm biased because my focus is completely on containers and serverless. I think those were super interesting. I think especially seeing all the different routes and figuring out which could be the best fit for any kind of workload, company culture, maturity, whatever. And I think the second most interesting thing from my market, at least, is all the things about observability. I mean, both the Amazon native tooling that's been created with machine learning and all that kind of stuff behind it, but at the same time, also building further on open source like OpenTelemetry and Grafana and all those kind of things. So it's kind of interesting dual horse kind of bet, we know Amazon by now, so they have multiple horses for one problem running around for all kinds of it. So I think those were the most interesting ones. From a more personal view, I was super, I'm still waiting for a good excuse to start doing something with machine learning in my own time and playing around with that. And I don't know, one of the things I was thinking about was finding using machine learning to recognize people doing the checks on the street if you paid for your car to be parked on the street, and to recognize them automatically. That's one of the things, one of the use cases I can think of to play around with machine learning, but that's a personal ambition.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more and more of those applied uses there, and I think that's becoming really cool. And it'll take a few more years before we get to more mature offerings from companies as well. And also, what I think really is something I'm looking forward to is when more. At least in my day-to-day work, we work a lot of time with enterprises, and they're traditionally not that far ahead yet. But when those people start using machine learning and define actual problems that they can solve that they cannot currently solve, I think that will be really interesting to see that happen. Can't
Walter,
wait
can
for
I
that
answer
to
your
happen.
question, your earlier question about favorite launch?
Yes, for sure.
No, so I don't know if I should be saying this, but I think I should anyway. But I'm really proud of the Cloud Shell launch because I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of the development happened here in the Benelux,
Nice.
which is not usually the case with most AWS services. That it happens centrally in Seattle, US, wherever. But the Cloud9 team is based out of Amsterdam, and a lot of the dev happened here. So I thought it was really cool, and to see like Fana announce that was, I think, cool for me.
Nice. Yeah, I think Cloud Shell. Initially, I didn't really get it when I saw that it was in the AWS console, but then I saw very quickly that people also made it work from an actual terminal, and that's where, for me, it gets a lot more interesting than something I have to click on. A terminal and a web interface is just simply not doing it for me. But no, that's really cool.
You're too old school, Walter.
Yeah, probably. You can leave the school out. I'm just old. It is what it is.
I hope my microphone is working well now.
Yeah, I think it was rubbing against your the edge of your sweater. It's not a big deal. Okay. Any questions from the audience? If you have them, please fill them in the comments section. For me, one of the things I found most interesting, and I did quite a bit of research on it in the past year, is Amazon Connect, and I think it's one of those underappreciated services that is secretly super powerful, but people are not enough aware of what its use cases actually are. You don't need to run a big contact center to make use of it. At my day job, we now use Connect as a main phone line. So if you call a company, Connect is actually one that guides you to one of the front office people that would normally help you. Only now they get called in their home, so you can still call us by phone and get an answer. And those kind of things are really quite useful as far as I'm.
I have a question for you related to that, Walter. Do you use the the interface that they give you for it, like the agent interface? Because I've been looking at Connect for like as a replacement for build your own Google Voice kind of stuff, and I always run into, but you need to run this app to be like logged in as an agent, or have like strict forwarding that doesn't give you any extra info there. So is that something that you have run into, using it as like an office tool, or is that basically like you're using it the way it's meant to be used?
No, yeah, we're using forwards to people's mobiles, simply because it makes the most sense. So they don't have to be logged in, and we just use a time schedule to determine who it gets forwarded to. The one thing I don't like necessarily about Connect is that it's very hard to automate because it doesn't almost have any APIs, and that's really it's a really strange feeling to encounter an AWS service that is almost completely devoid of API calls. It in the beginning I just couldn't believe it. What do you mean you cannot bring up a Connect center with an API call? That's insane. Or change the call flow.
I will tell you one thing though. There's just a lot of updates being pushed to Connect, like almost internally. Like I see like a whole bunch. So keep a lookout. Not saying anything else, but it's one of those services, like you said, Walter, that I think is slightly underappreciated. And now people are like, oh, you can do so much with it, especially with contact centers, people working from home. So expect a lot of improvements.
I think, and that might be related to one of my favorite like little launches this year, is that organizations had the same problem where it was like really focused on people using it in the console and then clicking on the SCPs and doing everything there and creating everything over there, because that's like, I know the team that we're mostly focused on right at that point. And then finally this year we got like the API support and the CloudFormation support and things like that, which will make it a lot easier for us, like we are actually automating things to start using that in a more managed way.
For me personally, the most nice launch this year was personally the Amazon Cloud Shell, because using this tool, you don't have to take care about keys. You don't have to take care about a lot of tools you can find already installed, pre-installed. And also, I don't know if David said this, we have also in the root account, in the root, we have 1 GB of free space, so we can store our data, 1 GB of data. For the company point of view, I think I found very interesting the AWS Managed Service for Prometheus and Grafana, because this helped us a lot to build a dashboard and to analyze metrics, logs, and etc. So this is really good tools.
And I think really what I really liked about the Grafana offering is that together with a few other data points, I'm seeing slowly a course correction from AWS when it comes to open source and how they're treating open source. We're not there yet, of course, but those things would be almost unthinkable 2-3 years ago. And now we see some actual serious open source contributions happening, and the way Grafana works, and you can just upgrade to Grafana Enterprise, and through your AWS bill pay Grafana, the company, for those licenses. For me, that's really amazing, and I really hope that we can see more of that kind of real partnership, so that the company who spent all that blood, sweat, and tears making a great product actually gets the money they deserve.
I personally think that it's not a new thing. Like it's definitely getting more noticeable, but I think if they did this 2 or 3 years ago, it wouldn't be that surprising. It's just Amazon is a very large ship, and it just takes a while for those course connections to actually become visible as a thing that they're doing. But participating in open source is not a new thing for AWS, but it's just getting more and more pronounced and more something they actually are proud of to bring out to the outside.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you look at like the feature that we actually started with immediately, it was again one of those small things, but the GP3 EBS volumes, that was basically the one that we were like, oh, it's announced. Yeah, let's just start trying it out and rolling it out everywhere. Because
there's
it was
literally no reason to not do it.
There was a reason to not do it. Like the first few days, we were running into some issues that we were like they could have waited like 2 more days to get this ironed out. But the at least once those were done, like it was like not really a downside to start using it.
No, yeah, it's cheaper, faster, better, in-place upgrade. Like, tell me a reason why this is not possible. If you have a process that prevents this from happening, then you probably need to look at your processes. Cool. Let's finish up with one last question. What is your prediction for reInvent 2021? Are we gonna do an in-person one? So you're not allowed to answer because you probably already know. Yeah, exactly. But for the rest of us, we have no paperwork that tells us we cannot guess what's going to happen. But I'd really like to see an in-person one, even if it's smaller and incontinent. For me, that would even be better.
I would really like an Europe version. I don't expect to have an in-person reInvent experience this year, because I'm assuming that if there's one, it's going to be in the US, and I don't see us traveling or see me traveling to the US this year for a conference. I think it will be a bit longer before it's possible.
Plus, I think Amazon-wide, they've already announced everybody to work from home till July or something. So, then it seems highly unlikely. But, time will tell. Okay.
Actually, can I change that question a little bit? Like, do we have predictions about like new announcements that we like to see or expect to see from now until reInvent? like my favorite thing for them to announce would be like one integrated development experience to install tools. I know that's like a very small thing. That's not a new service. That's not nothing big, but just like give me one way. I want to have like the, like you said, Copilot. I want to have the AWS CLI. I want to have whatever else there is to install the EKS control, stuff like that. I just want to be able to run one install command for all of those and just have that on my build machine and my code pipeline on my local machine without having to go in every documentation page to find how do I install this. So that would be like my wish for expectations or wish for reInvent next year. Like if they announce that, I'm happy. They don't need to announce anything else.
What do you think, Angelo?
Well, looking the trend of this year, I think maybe AWS will concentrate more on machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think. I don't know.
It seems likely more. And what I think we saw this year for the first time is traditional products enriched with AI and machine learning features.
Yeah.
That actually make it better, and I think that's quite important, because then we're talking about usefully applied machine learning and AI, and I think that we'll see much more of that in the years to come. Frederik, what do you want to see on the container side?
I guess more and more the services will start having more and more crossover that they're starting to get. I kind of hope they'll make it a bit more clear in a way with where each one is best positioned. I fully agree with what you said, Walter. That was actually the thing I thought of, that there'll be more and more applying basically the ML in other services and making them better. I think that's a big one. And maybe even in developer flows. I mean, going back to what Ben said, everything that a lot of the nice announcements have been focused on that. I think bringing back Amazon to where it all started, with developers, empowering developers, and creating support for the work. I think adding ML there, and there's code inspector, so I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well to really augment the whole experience and deployment of that. So my guess is that that'll probably get much more attention here as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the developer experience is a big piece of winning the hearts and minds of the whole industry, because developers make the world go around. We ops people, we just help here and there, but it's really the developers that make or break this stuff.
Maybe one more addition. I think Amazon will always keep trying to put me out of business. And that's just an interesting challenge that we've been having for a couple of years, and that's what makes it fun. I think a lot of us still run this too.
Let's see. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think there will be, like we've seen the integration with the AI ML things more and more. So that wouldn't surprise me to see more of that. I also think there's still a lot of things that might come in the networking space. We had a lot of those also this year, so I think there will still be some like next step to take for we have the gateway load balancer now, which gives you like an outgoing firewall proxy service, things like that. There will be just like the next ask will there. Okay, we have managed rule sets like we have in WAF and things like that. So I also expect some things in the networking space to bring more and more of those currently third-party appliance features into VPC networking.
No, and I think that the more IoT side, the 5G stuff will probably see quite a big ramp up this year, because that's being deployed across the globe. So it makes sense that we'll see more in that space as well. So Han, I would ask you, but you're not allowed to say anything anyway, or can you think of something that you're actually allowed to say?
I'll say two things. One, of course, is, hey, most of our launches are customer focused, right? So we hear feedback like this, and I'm not even kidding. I took down some of the notes that you made right now, just so that I can relay these things back to the team, because that is how we work. It's not just like a spiel that we give people. Literally, this is what we do. I will add to what Walter said about launch though, and I hope to see a lot more about wavelength. I didn't speak about it too much because there's not much in the EU right now. 5G is actually dependent on a lot of infrastructure. So you need like a Vodafone, you need like a whoever to actually build infrastructure everywhere for 5G to be possible. And that opens up a lot of other possibilities. It opens up possibilities in like healthcare and entertainment and a lot of other cool things. And wavelength will, I think, play a big picture. So, I'm sure we will see a lot of announcements there in the next couple of years.
Yeah, okay, quite curious how that could, because when you read about 5G, it could be a complete change in everything, or it can be like Y2K where we make a lot of hoo-ha and then nothing actually happens. So,
and it apparently causes COVID, so.
Especially in the Netherlands. Yeah.
I was being sarcastic, please don't quote me on that. I have to say that, if people clip that one part of the video.
Before we go, Son, there was one question that we didn't answer yet. That is whether you're going to be able to share the slides or not.
That's a good question. I should be able to share the slides. How do you typically do this? Do you like put out a link on the meetup group or something?
Yes.
Okay.
That's typically our way to do it. I don't know from the Netherlands sides.
Yeah, so.
Side notes, I think YouTube definitely keeps the recording. I guess Twitch does the same in Twitch. So the live stream shall be actually, you can always go back to it later as well for those interested.
Yeah. Correct. All right, then I guess it's off to the recap. Bring your own drinks. Drink. Drinks.
Drink.
Whatever.
Your own drink.
The link is in the comment box. I have unfortunately another meeting that I need to go to, so I'll go and do that. But thank you, Sohan, so much for your efforts. Really nice to have you, and I'm sure we'll see you around soon enough. Thank you, Angelo, Frederik, Ben. Thank you, Zamira, on the background.
Thank you for having
me. Did I miss anyone?
Yeah,
see,
thanks,
this is
folks.
horrible.
If you won any of the trivia questions, just ping me offline. You'll get your prize. Follow me on Twitch. I run like a show every week. I couldn't do one today, but it usually happens on Thursdays. And most of all, thank you, for staying and for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, David and Martin and Jeroen also. I think that's all. That's everyone.
That's
Pretty
everyone.
sure it's everyone. If I didn't mention you, it's not personal. I'm an idiot.
So
thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Walter, for
being here
and organizing this. So
yeah, awesome.
Bye,
guys.
Bye.
Bye.